In the second video on industry analysis, we'll be focusing on analyzing the trends that occur outside of the industry that impact the industry players and industry profitability. From the previous video, you probably recognize this figure. We're going to be focusing on this first circle here. If you recall, one of the major sources of firm profitability, or one of the major drivers, are the macroeconomic factors, which can represent anywhere up to 25 to 35% of firm profits, depending on the industry and the timing. These are forces outside of the industry, or trends outside of the industry, that affect the overall economy and thus drive industries and drive industry demand and industry preferences. The framework we will use to discuss these macroeconomic forces is called the Pestel analysis, and the term Pestel comes from the first letter of each one of these 6 categories. And the way this framework works is, for each one of these 6 categories, you're going to look at and identify key trends that are happening within each one of the categories that are impacting the industry of choice. And you're going to try and understand, one, what that trend involves, and then what the impact of that trend is on the industry. So, for example, in the political sphere, we would be looking at the influence of politics on the industry, maybe through lobbying or through the political party that is in power that is influencing the industry through its efforts. In the economic category, you'll look at things like maybe it's changes in interest rates, or changes in discretionary income, or maybe it's tax changes, or currency events. So you're identifying key trends within the economic sphere that is influencing industry profitability and industry behavior. Socially, we're looking at things like changes in the demographic mix of society that impact the industry. So, for example, the difference in buying behaviors of millennials versus baby boomers. Or we might be looking at the changing mix of income distribution or education distribution, and how that impacts industry behavior. From a technological standpoint, what we're focusing on are technological innovations outside the industry that are driving or changing industry behavior. For example, in the automobile industry, we have all the technological changes related to artificial intelligence, which are changing the automobile industry by increasing the rate of adoption of driverless technology, which will have a dramatic effect on the automobile industry in the future. Environmentally, we're looking at things such as climate change, or the availability of natural resources, and how those factors are influencing the industry, both in terms of industry demand, industry supply, industry profitability, etc. And then finally, from a legal perspective, we're focused on what are the regulations or potential changes in regulations that may impact the industry. So, for example, if we're talking about the restaurant industry, any changes to the minimum wage rate and minimum wage law would affect restaurant industries dramatically. Or if we're thinking about the financial services industry and we talk about changes in disclosure requirements. So the goal here is to come up, for each one of these 6 categories, is to come up with the key trends in each category that are impacting the industry, its players, its demand, its supplies, all the key aspects within an industry. And we want to understand the nature of that impact. Is it positive or negative? With that list of trends we created from the Pestel analysis, we now want to prioritize that list. And as you can see here, we want to start thinking about what are the trends that have the greatest probability of occurrence. So what are the ones that we think are most likely to occur or are already occurring? And then 2, have the greatest impact on the industry. And so anything that has the greatest probability of occurrence and the greatest impact puts them in this red area of high priority. And so we'll want to think about, with the Pestel analysis, looking through all the trends we've identified and identify the top 2 to 4, say, trends, and a small number, the most critical trends that are driving that industry and driving change within that industry that will impact industry customers, industry competitors, industry suppliers, etc. And it's important to make this prioritization step so that we can start to think about what trends should firms within that industry take into account as they design their strategies. In closing, just a reminder, the objective of industry analysis is to identify the key trends and factors that influence firm performance that exist outside the firm within the industry. And as a reminder, industry analysis involves multiple levels, and here we discuss specifically the Pestel analysis, which focuses on identifying the impact of the macro-environmental trends on the industry. And it's important to then prioritize these Pestel forces and highlight the most critical ones that are impacting the industry. And as a general rule, I like to try and highlight the most critical 2 to 4 trends with the greatest impact on the industry.